of 1812. So you should have your notes titled Jeffersonianism and the War of 1812 out in front of you. Once you're done with this video, you need to turn it in to the drawer. You can pause, you can play things back, don't fast forward. But this is to help clarify some important ideas about, obviously, Jefferson and the War of 1812. So I first wanted to play and show you this clip. Let me move myself. About the dominance of the Republican Democrats, the Democratic Republicans. And really, vice versa, the decline of the Federalist Party. So John Adams is really the only true Federalist. There's still a debate about George Washington. But we see the presidencies of Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, and John Quincy Adams as being Democratic Republicans. Slowly, those political parties will start to transform into Jacksonian Democrats, which is the basis of the Democratic Party today, or at least its namesake. Some ideals will continue on forward. Other ideas will get shifted to later on the Republican Party. And we're going to be looking at that all year long. But a pretty good visual for us. So what is Jeffersonianism? Jeffersonianism is based off of these kind of 6 virtues, which is on your sheet. So expanding on that, he believes in small r republicanism, right? Civic duty and the importance of an education. He obviously believes in states' rights. And fundamentally, this is the most important part of Jeffersonianism, is his vision for America, right? He believes in the yeoman farmer as the ideal citizens. The yeoman farmer is someone who is educated and independent and who owns, obviously, land. Because he believed that being a farmer, being and owning agriculture and producing something automatically made you a virtuous person. You might say, Ms. Kimmick, Jefferson didn't work the land. He made his slaves do it. Well, in Jefferson's eyes, that doesn't really matter. But he believed that manufacturers and people of industry like lawyers and merchants who didn't work with their lands, who didn't, produce something out of their own labor, as being inherently distrustful. So that kind of shapes a lot and gives us a little bit more of an explanation as to why he hated Hamilton so much, right? In terms of foreign policy, he believes it's the United States' responsibility to spread democracy around the world, but he will relax that once we see other revolutions like the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution turn violent. And the Haitian Revolution is going to be a catalyst for why Napoleon decides to sell the Louisiana Purchase. So before we get to what actually happens in Jefferson's administration, I want to do a little bit of a close analysis on his first inaugural address. You have it printed on your sheets, and there's also margin space for you to add some extra notes. So in context, he won the Revolution of 1800. He won that election. And so during his inaugural speech, he's going to try and give some conciliatory measures to all of Americans. So he begins, friends and fellow citizens. I avail myself of the presence of that portion of my fellow citizens which is here assembled. So he places himself in front of the people to express my grateful thanks for the favor which they have been pleased to look towards me. So he's talking to and humbling himself kind of to the people who voted for Jefferson, which obviously catapulted him into the office of the presidency. His next famous line is what he's known for in this address. He says, "We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists." Here, most people and most historians will say that he is trying to calm the fear of the Federalists, to unite the country. And that's true. But Jefferson didn't, they still aren't believers in a two-party system. He's not necessarily trying to say, oh, let's all unite and be one people. He's saying we are all Republicans, we are all Federalists, in the sense that there is one party here in the United States. And that was built on his vision of an agrarian future and a producing by the fruit of your labor future of the yeoman farmer. The next section, he outlines some principles of our government, and he lists them. The honest payment of our debts and sacred preservation of the public faith, the encouragement of agriculture, and of commerce as its handmaid. So here, he's placing, first and foremost, most important, agriculture, his vision for the United States. Below that is trade and commerce to aid agriculture, because if you're producing stuff, you have to export it, right? So Jefferson will take an approach to commerce as wanting to expand trade and also not to get involved in foreign alliances, because he's trying to establish an economy based on exporting agriculture. He then lists some important freedoms: freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and freedom of person. These principles form the bright constellation which has gone before us and guide our steps through an age of revolution and reformation. So you can even say that because he's highlighting civil liberties here, freedom of the press, freedom of person, he's specifically attacking the Alien and Sedition Acts. He ends his speech. He says, "I advance with obedience to the work, ready to retire from it whenever you," meaning the people, "become sensible how much better choice it is in your power to make." So he says, I will serve as long as you want me to until our next election. He's also emphasizing the importance of the people, the masses, above himself. This next section is, I just want to review a couple highlights about Jefferson's presidency. There's space for you to take notes. You don't have to get every little word that's on the slide. In fact, there's not many. Sorry. The United States is expanding, so we are expanding to the Mississippi River. Kentucky, Tennessee will become new states. The population is growing quite rapidly. This is even before the Louisiana Purchase, so that's an important thing to keep in the back of your mind. Louisiana Purchase, it is offered by France not only for the Port of New Orleans, but all of Louisiana. And the reason why is Napoleon kind of gives up on that idea of a French North American empire. He also is strapped for cash. He needs the money to pay his troops, equip his troops, buy firearms and all that stuff to establish dominance in Europe. Jefferson wants it because, A, he wants to expand his vision, but also another effect that he's happy with is that it removes another nation from Europe, France mainly, from North America. Yes, Spain is still in Mexico, Great Britain is still in Canada, but they're preoccupied. He's further ensuring and protecting that idea of distinct Americanness being based on his vision as an agricultural country. The Embargo Act of 1807 is Jefferson's reaction to the continued impressment of sailors by the British and also the French. And the Embargo Act backfires on Jefferson most profusely. That's because the Embargo Act says that we're going to stop trading with every other country in the world. Don't even mind Britain and France. We're also not going to trade with Spain, with Holland, with Mexico, with anybody else, because we're mad, right? And we're not going to trade until you guys stop attacking American ships. It was a complete and utter failure, and it doesn't actually hurt Great Britain or France at all. It doesn't work. So they try, and this is at the very end of Jefferson/beginning of Madison's presidency, they pass the Non-Intercourse Act, which opens up trade to everyone except Great Britain and France. That doesn't really work as well. The Embargo Act hurt New York merchants terribly, and the Embargo Act is vilified in the newspapers, and you're actually going to be looking at a famous political cartoon in the War of 1812 documents. So, reflecting on Jefferson's policies, and I'm trying to move myself out of here. the screen. So I want you to pause it here, and I want you to look and complete the chart. Right? So these are things that demonstrate his Democratic-Republican side and his Federalist side. And then there's kind of a reflecting question at the end. Why do you think Jefferson had to go against his own principles? Do you think this was wise? And just explain it a little bit. James Madison becomes president in 1809. He passes the Non-Intercourse Act and also Macon's Bill No. 2. Again, as a diplomatic efforts to prevent and stop British impressment. But British impressment is considered to be probably the #1 cause of the War of 1812. Also, there are charges that the British are arming Native Americans in the Ohio Territory. That's Tecumseh and his brother, the Prophet. There's the attack of the USS Chesapeake against the British vessel, the Leopard. We also tried to invade Canada because the United States obviously wants to expand into the fur trade, and Canada is a tempting prize. We want that area. We've wanted it ever since the American Revolution. It fails. It's a big, and the whole Canada campaign in the war is a big failure. We lose practically all the battles in the War of 1812 except for 2. Couple of key points. The Star-Spangled Banner is written here after the Battle of Fort McHenry by Francis Scott Key. One of the battles we did win was by General Harrison, William Henry Harrison, who will become president. At the Battle of Thames, Tecumseh is killed at the battle, aided, of course, by the Redcoats. The British actually burn Washington in 1814. They whoop our butts. And then we sign the Treaty of Ghent, which ends not only the War of 1812, but also the Napoleonic Wars. Great Britain, by this time, they are tired. They've been fighting nonstop for 15 years. There's really a lot of pressure internally from home. Great Britain finally decides to remove their troops from the Erie in the Ohio River Valley that we tried to get under Jay's Treaty. The Battle of New Orleans, the only clear victory that we actually won during the War of 1812, occurred after the treaty was already signed, but there's no instant message Twitter that immediately announces the victory and the fact that we signed the treaty. So Jackson is catapulted to hero status. Okay, so I want to look very quickly at this partial DBQ. You need to work through the prompts, work through the questions. We're going to go over this. Please mark up the documents before you start, before you fill in this chart here. And all you got to do is write a thesis. We'll talk about the other parts of the documents later. If you do not finish this, this is for homework in addition to your reading notes. Okay, guys, that's it. Hope this helps clarify some Jeffersonian ideas and the War of 1812. Have a great day.